died due to reckless piloting. Pilot Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Holland was known for making aggressive flight maneuvers and flying too close to the ground throughout his career. Holland, while performing a turnaround in a nearby tower, failed to increase the engine's power in time to maintain the plane's speed, causing the plane to stall too close to the ground for Holland to correct the error, leading to the tragic accident. Holland's disregard for flight regulations, compounded by the failure of his superiors to reprimand him for his behavior and 12-mile-an-hour winds affecting the turn, created conditions sufficient for the crash. Other factors include the fact that Holland had not flown before the flight and a mass shooting with the base's hospital only days before. The shooting took a tremendous emotional toll on everyone stationed there, including Holland and his crew. So today, we'll be looking at 10 of the worst plane crashes caught on video and discussing why they happened. Air France Flight 296 crash. Mulhouse-Obchium Airport, France, 1988. Although the exact cause of the crash is unknown, officials believe the crash was likely due to a combination of the low height and speed of the plane, among other pilot errors. The presence of a nearby forest, which the plane crashed into, certainly did not help. Despite the massive explosion that followed the accident, most of the people on board survived. Fortunately, of the 136 people on board the plane, 133 survived, with 50 suffering non-fatal injuries, many hitting their heads on the seats in front of them and suffering from smoke inhalation, and only 3 casualties. Despite the number of people on the plane and the horrible crash, things could have been much worse. I think those on board got off relatively lucky. Boeing C-17 crash, Elmendorf Air Force Base, USA, 2010. Those on board the Boeing C-17 in Alaska were not so lucky. Although there were only 4 people on the plane, all of them died. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of this crash is that it was entirely avoidable. The investigation afterwards showed that the crash was the result of a pilot executing a dangerous and unnecessary turning maneuver. Despite the plane's systems alerting the crew of a potential stall as a result of this maneuver, the team did not respond appropriately. The plane ultimately did stall at an altitude too low for the crew to correct their mistake, causing the plane to crash. Perhaps something to think about next time you want to make an aggressive lane switch. Boeing B-52 crash, Fairchild Air Force Base, USA, 1994. The Fairchild Air Force Base crash is another tragic accident in which all 4 onboard National Airlines Flight 102 crash. Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan, 2013. Unlike the previous crashes we've examined, which were the result of pilot error, this crash happened due to a mistake in securing the cargo aboard the plane. National Airlines Flight 102 was carrying 3 armored vehicles and 2 minesweeping vehicles, weight 80 tons total, which were not adequately secured. The accident investigation showed at least 1, if not more, of these vehicles became loose. The loose vehicle or vehicles rolled toward the back of the plane, causing the nose of the plane to lift upwards, ruining its balance, and damaging its rear bulkhead and hydraulic systems. The damage to the plane rendered it uncontrollable. The plane stalled and crashed to the ground, killing all 7 people on board. As a result, some of the National Airlines clients, such as New Zealand Defence Force, suspended their partnership with the airport, and an overhaul of the training methods for cargo loaders was highly recommended, and for a good reason. TransAsia Airways Flight 235, Keelung River, Taiwan, 2015. This TransAsia flight headed for Chinatown from Taiwan went down less than 2 minutes after takeoff. The plane's right engine malfunctioned almost immediately after it took the air. The pilots flying the plane mistakenly shut off the properly functioning left engine instead though. With the left engine manually shut off and the right engine not producing enough power to keep the plane in the air, the plane began to fall rapidly. By the time the crew had realized their error and restarted the left engine, it was far too late. They had dropped too close to the ground to fix the dire situation in which they had found themselves. The plane crashed a few seconds later into the Keelung River, killing 43 people and injuring 17 more. 2 of which were in a taxi on a bridge that the left wing of the plane had struck. Aeroflot Flight 1492 crash, Sheremetyevo International Airport, Russia, 2019. Compared to the other crashes on this list, this one is straightforward and unpreventable. There were no errors by pilots, their crews, or by loading personnel. Aeroflot Flight 1492 was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time, being struck by lightning less than 30 minutes after takeoff. After being hit, the pilot and crew immediately attempted an emergency landing. While the landing was reasonable, given the circumstance, only a few people died as a result of the physical crash itself. Instead, most of the 41 who died in this tragic accident lost their lives as a result of the fire. The fire caused by the plane's rear end skidding along the runway was also out of the crew's control. In short, this was just bad luck for those people and their families. Boeing 727 crash, Puerto Carreno, Colombia, 2016. This cargo plane headed from Puerto Carreno to Bogota is another example of pilot error as the pilot overshot the runway, failing to get high enough in the air to avoid a chain link fence at the end of the airport's runway. As a result, the plane crashed into the barrier and nearly hitting multiple civilians just outside the airport in the process. The plane also hit a shed, which ripped off its right wing, further crippling its ability to maneuver safely. Even after hitting various objects and losing one of its wings, the plane was still able to get a few hundred feet off the ground for a few minutes. It was a futile effort though, as the plane was unable to gain or even maintain altitude while making a turn. Ultimately, the plane came crashing down, killing 5 of the 6 onboard crew members. In Vnukovo, Russia, 2012. The Red Wings Airlines flight, while not carrying any passengers, was carrying 8 crew members when it overran its landing runway in Moscow. After overshooting the landing strip, the plane hit a ditch and a nearby highway, killing 5 of the 8 crew members on board. There was a multitude of factors that contributed to this crash. According to the reports, the plane was navigating at winds over 30 miles an hour, and it had snowed earlier that day. And another plane of the same model experienced malfunctioning brakes, causing it to crash only days before this one, despite landing exactly where it was supposed to. Despite the attempts by the crew to manually brake the plane to a halt, the plane did not slow down quickly enough due to its subpar braking mechanisms and the slick, icy conditions. All of which led to the tragic crash that cost 5 people their lives. Boeing 767 crash. The Indian Ocean, Comoro Islands, 1996. This Boeing 767 was a commercial flight from Ethiopia to Kenya with 172 passengers and crew on board. En route to its destination, 3 Ethiopians seeking asylum in Australia hijacked the plane and demanded that the pilot reroute the plane to Australia. Despite the pilot notifying the hijackers that the plane only had enough fuel to reach its original destination of Kenya, the hijackers did not believe them. They insisted that he fly the plane to Australia regardless of his warning. Obliging the hijackers, or so they thought, the pilot told them he would reroute the plane towards Australia. Unbeknownst to the hijackers, the pilot secretly was flying to the Comoro Islands in between Madagascar and the African coast. As the pilot said it would, the plane indeed ran out of fuel. The left engine of the plane hit the ocean and a coral reef located underneath it, causing the plane to turn violently and break apart. Of the 172 people on board, 122 died, including the hijackers, with the other 50 suffering non-fatal injuries. JetBlue Flight 292 crash. Los Angeles International Airport, USA, 2005.
Breaking news right now in Long Beach, and this could be a significant problem for this JetBlue aircraft that is coming in for a landing, we believe. You can see right there.
A commercial flight from Bob Hope Airport in Burbank to John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City found itself in trouble immediately after takeoff. After leaving the ground, the pilots tried to retract the landing gear but failed. After becoming aware of this issue, they flew low over Long Beach Municipal Airport so that their control tower could assess the damages of the plane before attempting to land. The control tower confirmed that the front landing wheel was rotated 90 degrees to the left, which would have made the landing immediately unsafe. As such, the pilots wisely chose to land at Los Angeles International Airport because of its wider runways and newer safety equipment. As the plane's destination was New York City, it had several tons of fuel in its tank. This plane model could not dump its fuel, so the pilots chose to fly in a figure 8 pattern between Bob Hope Airport and the Los Angeles International Airport for over 2 hours. The calculated decision served multiple purposes. With less fuel in the tank, the likelihood of fire or explosion falls significantly upon landing. Also, by burning more fuel, the plane would become lighter, putting less stress on an already compromised landing gear and reducing the speed at which they would land. For all these reasons, the risk of landing minimized as much as possible. When the plane did finally land, there were no injuries and no casualties, and the emergency responders on the ground thankfully proved to be unnecessary. In essence, the crew's shrewd decision-making possibly saved dozens of lives. I thought it was appropriate to end on a high note given the disastrous way the previous crashes we talked about ended. We all know too well in these times with the virus that we need some good news to help deal with the bad. With that said, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, at least as much as you can given the subject matter. If you enjoyed this video or just found it informative, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share to help out the channel and receive notifications for when I upload my next video.
But you can see no indications of any fire on board this aircraft. It appears that this has all come to a very safe conclusion.